than Wembley. Details of these and more coming shortly. The Nigeria Medical Association, NMA, has appealed to the federal government to spare no efforts at revamping local vaccines production in Nigeria. The association made the appeal in a communique issued at the end of its annual General Conference and Delegates Meeting, Tin City 2021, held in Jos, Plateau State, with the theme Nigeria and the Global Health Agenda 2030. The communique, jointly signed by its national president, Professor Innocent Uja, and the Secretary General, Dr. Ekpe Phillips, stated that the conference took cognizance of the fact that Nigeria had demonstrated capacity in vaccine production against yellow fever in the past through the Federal Vaccines Production Laboratory in Yaba. The NMA urged the federal government to lead in mobilizing state governments to garner the needed political will, financial resources, partnerships and other requirements to rejig their emergency plans, preparedness and response to epidemics and pandemics. It called on the federal government to take the lead in appropriately funding existing health institutions and services, as well as adequate provision of welfare and conducive work environment for doctors and other healthcare workers.
The conference is saddened by the worsening spate of killings, maimings, kidnapping, banditry, arson, insurgency, and other forms of violence with attendant socio-economic consequences in almost all parts of the country. NMA is deeply concerned that the healthcare delivery has been severely affected and therefore called on all citizens of Nigeria to jettison dangerous, unpatriotic tendencies while urging the federal government to renew its efforts to quickly bring this humanitarian disaster under control. The conference noted with deep concern the epidemiological triple jeopardy of existing infectious diseases, emerging infections including the ongoing pandemic, and the ticking time bomb of the non-communicable diseases. It therefore called on the federal government to lead in mobilizing states and governments to garner the highly needed political will, financial resources, partnership, and requirements to rejig its emergency plans, preparedness, and response to pandemics, appropriate funding for existing health institutions and services, as well as adequate provision of welfare and conducive work environment for doctors and other health workers.
Well, still on coronavirus, the Lagos State government says it will enforce the coronavirus pandemic law against defaulters to ensure the protection of citizens against the third wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. The State Commissioner for Health, Professor Akin Abayomi, spoke at a media briefing on the Lagos COVID-19 third wave mitigation strategy. Abayomi said the state government would take the law seriously, adding that enforcement was key in mitigating the third wave of the COVID-19 infection in the state. According to him, the law confers on the state governor the right to order the quarantine, imprisonment, sanctions, and fines for individuals who deliberately disobey the law and endanger lives of citizens. The commissioner said that the state had evolved 5 strategies for curbing a potential COVID-19 third wave in the state, listing the strategies as testing and isolation of travelers. The commissioner said that the federal government had banned non-Nigerians from India, Brazil, and Turkey from entering into the country.
We are carrying out this strategy alongst 5 pillars. The first pillar is to make sure that we keep our testing high. So we are equipping the Lagos State Biobank with the capacity to do 2 types of PCR tests. The first type is just to pick up a positivity, and the second type is to try and help us characterize that virus and put it into either one of the strains that we know are circulating around the world. In addition, we're using eco-telemedicine and what we call the eco-telemed platform to manage people at home. Of course, the third pillar there is the standard hygiene principles and social distancing that we are all familiar with. The fourth pillar there is our oxygen strategy. We are ensuring that we have the capacity to make more and more oxygen in Lagos State. an additional consignment of 57,000 doses extra of AstraZeneca. So the ring vaccination strategy, when we get somebody that has turned positive, who has recently returned from abroad, and you have tested positive, then we will be deploying some of the vaccines to vaccinate members of their family.
To security issues now, human rights lawyer and a senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, has commended the southern governors for banning open grazing in the 17 southern states of the country. Falana, who spoke during an interview, asked the governors to back their plan on open grazing with a legal instrument to enable the prosecution of offenders. He also asked the governors to ensure state attorneys general come together and put in machinery for translating the resolutions into laws. The popular lawyer also reacted to the governor's demand for restructuring of the country, coupled with the issue of control of resources.
What it does mean is that in order to secure the life and property of every citizen in every state in the country, open grazing, night grazing, underage grazing will no longer be allowed in the country. And when you look at it, it is also in the interests of the herders, whereby the governors before now, and this is very important, the governors had agreed before now, and I'm talking of their meeting, I refer to the meeting of the governors, all the governors, held on the 11th of February this year, where they unanimously agreed that open grazing should no longer be allowed in the country. And that indeed, the country has got to the stage where it has to transit to modern husbandry, whereby ranching will replace open grazing. That is the decision of all the governors. So what the southern governors did in Asaba was to reiterate this position. It's a popular decision by all the 36 state governments in Nigeria.
The Nigeria Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, NUPENG, has directed its members to shut down services in Kaduna State with effect from May 16th. The directive was in compliance to Nigeria Labour Congress' 5-day warning strike over the sack of workers in the state. NUPENG's General Secretary, Mr. Afolabi Olawole, gave the directive in a letter addressed to Petroleum Tanker Drivers branch of NUPENG. Olawole said compliance to the directive was necessary for the successful execution of the campaign against alleged anti-labor practices of Kaduna State Governor. NLC had directed workers in the state to totally withdraw services for 5 days, with effect from May 16th, 2021. The directive was given following the sack of over 4,000 workers in the state. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, reported one more death in the past 24 hours, bringing the total number of deaths from the disease in Nigeria to 2,066. The center also reported 44 new cases of the virus, bringing the total number of infections in the country to 165,559. The NCDC made the disclosure on its official Twitter handle late on Wednesday. The NCDC announced that the new cases were reported in 4 states, with Lagos and Rivers recording the highest numbers with 28 and 14 cases. Akwa Ibom and Ekiti states reported 1 case each. According to the Public Health Agency, the country's active cases stand at 7,092. And back here in Oyo, the State Director, National Orientation Agency, Mrs. Folake Ayola, has called on all Muslims and every Nigerian by extension to continue the good deeds and eschew every act that are ignoble, as the Muslims have exhibited in the holy month of Ramadan. She disclosed this in a felicitation message made available to the press today and personally signed by her media officer, Banke Adeniyi. She expressed her delight on the way Muslims all over the world exemplified these noble traits that are essential ingredients for social integration and harmonious living during the month of Ramadan, imploring all Nigerians to continue in that exemplary trait in their daily lives after Ramadan. The agency boss advised Muslims to continue to foster peace and boost social integration in continuation of the collective quest to building a valuable and indivisible society where peace and enduring progress will be attainable. She further noted that as Nigerian Muslims celebrate end of Ramadan, they should be reminded that the unity of Nigeria remains paramount, adding that they must stand firmly in rejection of the voices that seek to divide the people or limit religious freedoms or civic rights. The NOA boss, however, enjoined religious leaders to incorporate into their sermons those teachings that support tolerance and encourage social harmony, patriotism, orderliness and deference to the rule of law, among other virtues that were learned and practiced during the past holy month. You're still listening to the news at 1 p.m. on Splash 105.5 FM. Still ahead, India COVID-19 variant spreads to more African countries. And in sports, Portugal set to host Champions League final rather than Wembley. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, we'll bring you details of these and other stories. Just stay with us. Well, thank you so much for staying with us here on the news. Turning to the foreign scene now, 3 more African countries, Algeria, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Nigeria, have now detected the Indian variant of coronavirus. Dr. Ngoy Nsenge from the World Health Organization said that the confirmation brings to 7 the number of African nations that have confirmed the B1617 mutation, which initial studies show spreads more easily than other variants. Dr. Nsenga, who coordinates the WHO's COVID-19 response in Africa, said he had no further details on the number of cases or travel history of the people who tested positive in Algeria, DR Congo, and Nigeria. 4 African countries have already confirmed the presence of the B1617 variant, all linked with recent travel to India. Hamas militants have launched dozens of rockets at Israel after Israeli airstrikes killed senior commanders and felled another tower block in Gaza. The escalation, which began on Monday, has triggered street violence in Israel between Jews and Israeli Arabs. In 2 incidents, a Jewish man in Akka was attacked by Arab men, and a Jewish mob pulled a Palestinian out of his car and beat him up in Bat Yam. At least 67 people in Gaza and 7 people in Israel have so far been killed. Still on the foreign scene, Gabon's President Ali Bongo Ondimba has said the country could join the Commonwealth during the upcoming summit in Kigali, Rwanda. President Ondimba held talks with the Commonwealth Secretary General Patricia Scotland. He said the integration of Gabon into the Commonwealth would be a historical milestone. The Commonwealth is an association of 54 countries with shared goals like development, democracy, and peace. And finally, to some sports news now. Portugal is set to host the Champions League final after UEFA failed to receive the guarantees of exemptions it wants if it is to move the game to Wembley. UEFA, UK government officials, and the Football Association met on Monday to discuss moving the game between Chelsea and Manchester City from Istanbul. UEFA has decided it will be moved after Turkey was put on England's red travel list, meaning fans cannot travel. Portugal is on the green list, so fans would be allowed to attend on May 29th. Porto's Estadio do Dragão is expected to be named as the venue because UEFA would rather not stage the match in Lisbon, which hosted last year's final. And still in sports, former Ecuador and Manchester United captain Antonio Valencia has announced his retirement from football. The 35-year-old, who was playing for Querétaro in Mexico, had been suffering from a long-standing foot problem. Valencia first broke his foot in 2015 in the Manchester Derby. He spent a decade at United from 2009 to 2019 and ended his spell there as club captain after Michael Carrick retired in 2018. And just before we go, here's a quick recap of the headlines. Nigeria Medical Association has tasked the federal government on revamping local vaccine production. NUPENG has directed members to shut down services in Kaduna State. On the foreign scene, we told you the COVID-19 Indian variant has spread to more African nations. And in sports, Portugal set to host Champions League final rather than Wembley. For more details on the news, you can visit our website on www.splashfm1055.com. Now you can download Splash FM mobile app on iOS, BlackBerry World, and Google Play Store to listen live, get news updates, and opinion poll. You can also report an event live to us through the iReport feature. To download, simply go to any of the stores mentioned and search for Splash FM 105.5 and then click to download. We've now come to the end of the news on Splash 105.5 FM, the Integrity Station, and the best radio station in the southwest of the country. The news editor is Tunde Olawowo, assisted by Abidemi Kajogbola. I am Charity Jerome. Good afternoon and thank you for listening.
Quick, charge at 240.
Hot